Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going over the Week 5 predictions of the NFL season. And let's head right into tomorrow's first game on Thursday. So tomorrow's game is between the Rams and the Seahawks, and this is going to be pretty close, I think. The Rams just coming off of a loss against the Cardinals, which wasn't really as close as I thought it was going to be, and then the Seahawks coming off of a win against the 49ers, which was also a close game. So it's going to be interesting to see what these two quarterbacks do, because Matthew Stafford, he's a gunslinger, and also Russell Wilson, he's also a gunslinger. So, and both quarterbacks have really fast weapons on offense. So, also that's going to be another thing to see how they're going to do there. And yeah, both defenses are good. I think the Rams have a better defense, and in that aspect, and then on offense, I think the Seahawks have a little bit of an edge on offense just because of the experience with the offense, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Russell Wilson, obviously. So I do think their offense has more experience together to be, a cohesive unit. But the Rams offense, we've seen they can put up numbers, but they did struggle against a pretty good defense. Now the Seahawks don't have the best defense, especially this season, so I'm not too sure what they're going to do to limit the amount of yards the Rams are going to get. And the Rams' run offense has been pretty weak when they are limiting Darrell Henderson, because he is injured a little bit. But he is going to be in, but he is questionable. But I do believe they're probably just going to limit him in this game. So I'm not really too sure how the run offense is going to do. But I do have the Rams winning this one against the Seahawks. I think it's going to be a close one though, but I think it's really going to come down to the better defense, and the Rams have the better defense in my opinion. Now going into the first game on the Sunday, we have the Jets versus the Falcons. The Jets coming off of a huge win against the Titans in overtime. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. I wasn't watching the game. I thought the Titans were going to win. And then I saw that they ended up losing 27-24 in overtime. And that was a pretty big win, I think, for the Jets, proving that they can win against a team that has really good offense, and a decent defense. Titans defense isn't the best, but especially the offense, having AJ Brown and having AJ Brown and Julio Jones out, for their team, showed that it hurt them a lot. And I didn't think they would need them for this game, but clearly they did. And that caused them to lose against the Jets. Now the Falcons, I believe, are coming off of a loss. I'll have to check that real quick. And I just checked, and the Falcons did lose to Washington 34-30. And the Falcons kept it pretty close against the football team, which is a really tough defense in Washington. So that was pretty interesting to see that the Falcons kept it really close with Washington. But I think the surprise of the week, definitely, which I'm going to talk about in my next episode that I'm recording on Saturday, that's the Jets beating the Titans. That's just crazy. But I do think this game is where the Jets' luck runs out. I do think the Falcons are going to win this one. I think they're going to be able to take advantage maybe of that defense. I'm really not too sure. This Jets team really confused me from last week. But if I'm keeping consistency with how the Jets have been doing, I think I'm going to have to go with the Falcons on this game. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Jets do after coming off such a big win. Maybe they keep the same type of defense, and they're able to limit the Titans or limit the Falcons to points, to only a little bit of points. But I think the Falcons have just a better offense, in my opinion. So that's why I'm going to have to take them in this game. So this one, I think is going to be a really close one between the Saints versus the Washington football team. And the Saints are coming off of a overtime loss to the Giants. I think just New York sports in general just did really well on Sunday. I mean, I can't say the same for the Yankees, unfortunately, but I think New York, the New York football teams that are coming out, they come out, win the overtime games against two really good football teams in the Saints and the Titans. And the Saints just, I guess, couldn't complete the job. I think Alvin Kamara has been doing, he's been doing good for, I'd say his numbers are good for a mediocre running back. Like, that's a really good game for a running back that doesn't do much, but his numbers are really declining, especially since I have him on my fantasy team. His numbers are really declining, and it seems like now they're kind of going away from the run game and going to a passing game or a more pass-heavy playbook because Jameis Winston is just able to throw the ball downfield so far, unlike Drew Brees. So it does look like they are going away from the running heavy playbook to just a passing playbook compared to last year, where Alvin Kamara just thrived in that. And this year, it just doesn't look like the same type of Saints offense. Obviously, with Drew Brees gone and Michael Thomas being gone, I think he may come back this week. I think I saw that he might come back by week 5 when his injury initially happened. I'm not sure if he is possibly coming back, but I did see that he might come back for this game. Now Washington coming off of a close one against the Falcons. And I think, their defense is really good. They've stayed pretty consistent with winning games, I'd say, or just their stat line. And that's why I have Washington winning this one. I do think it's going to be really close, though. The Saints are really good pass-heavy team, so Washington doesn't really have the best secondary to accommodate that. But the Saints, or if the Saints do run the ball, I think Washington will be set with being able to stop Alvin Kamara because of just how good their defensive line is. Now for Washington, the Saints defensive line, again, I think is going to be able to limit Washington. Now Washington's running backs, J.D. McKissick, and I can't remember the other running back's name. His name just lost in my mind. But it is going to be interesting to see how the football team does, or how Washington recovers from having two running backs possibly being out. Or Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick, they're both questionable. Antonio Gibson with a shin injury and J.D. McKissick with an ankle injury. So I'm not too sure how they're gonna, try to go around that. Because if they do try to pass it, the Saints have a pretty good secondary. But I do think Washington come out with a win on Sunday, but it's definitely gonna be a close one. Now, next game on the list is the Packers versus the Bengals. Now, the Packers coming off of a win against the Steelers, and that was pretty easy for the Packers. I think their defense line was just able to apply pressure on Ben Roethlisberger. He really couldn't do much. Their offense overall couldn't really do much that game, and their defense is just playing pretty good on Sunday. Now, as for the Bengals, last week on Thursday, they beat Jacksonville, and that was a really close game, surprisingly. I think Trevor Lawrence has been doing better in the NFL. I think he's caught up to the tempo of the NFL, because it is a lot slower and more competitive than college is. So I do think Trevor Lawrence is kind of getting used to that tempo of the NFL, and it showed on his game against the Bengals. But Joe Burrow did have a really good game, and then Evan McPherson with the game-winning kick. So this game, I do think, is going to be close, surprisingly. I think it's going to be close. I think the Bengals have a really good defense. They're going to be able to, defend Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then I think they're going to be able to kind of rush Aaron Rodgers to, force some passes, but that is going to be really hard because he is really good with throwing on the run. Now, as for the Packers, I do think their defense should be good enough to penetrate the offensive line and kind of force Joe Burrow to throw some interceptions like we saw in the Jacksonville game. And then also, the Bengals defense isn't really the best. So I do have the Packers winning this one, but I do think it is going to be a close. Now the next game on my list is the Lions versus the Vikings. Now the Lions coming off of a loss against the Bears. Some questionable calls there. And they did not make any sense. I don't know what Dan Campbell was thinking, because I think it would have been a lot closer game if they just went for 2 field goals and then maybe a field goal at the end, make it a 4-point game. I don't really know. But I'm not the coach of an NFL team, and he is. But there were some questionable calls there against the Bears late in the game and earlier on in the game. I'd say in the first half, they didn't really come out playing as well as they should have. And Aqib Talib said something that made a lot of sense to me and all the Lions fans, that they're 2 different teams. You get a team that plays really well either in the first half or second half, and then a team that plays really bad in the first half or the second half. And we saw the bad team in the first half and a good team in the second half, or at least a good defense until Romeo Okwara went down, and then it does look like he's going to be out for the season, which will affect the Lions' game plan against the Vikings. Now the Vikings coming off a close loss against the Browns, and it was a pretty low-scoring game than I thought it would be. But I did think it was going to be close. Now for this game, I do think the Vikings are going to win here. Just the Lions, I just don't think are going to have a good game this week. The Vikings defense or offensive line did show some weaknesses against the Browns, but that was mainly because they were triple teaming Myles Garrett, and then he still got through. So maybe the Lions could try to take that for their advantage and try to force the offensive linemen to, make some mistakes. And then the run game wasn't as good against the Browns, so I don't really know. Maybe that's just because the Browns defense, especially their defensive line, is really good. And then also, the Vikings defense did really well at holding the Browns to only 14 points, even though they did lose the game. That's pretty impressive because, in previous weeks, they've been putting up a lot of points. Just against the Bears, 26 the week before this game, or the last game, and then 31 against the Texans, and then they put up, 29 against the Chiefs in their loss. So the Browns have been consistently putting up some points. So it is going to be interesting to see how the Vikings defense is going to change what they can do. Especially, the Lions offense isn't really that high powered. Maybe just against the run game, they probably need to work on. But even then, Nick Chubb didn't really do that much against the Vikings. So I think the Vikings just overall have a really good team compared to the Lions, and that's why I think the Vikings are going to win. Next game on the list is the Bears versus the Raiders. And I think this is going to be a pretty good game. The Bears coming off of a pretty easy win over the Lions last week, 28-14. And, I think they're gonna have a pretty good game against the Raiders, but it's a harder defense. Just a defensive line, I guess you could say, that Max Crosby, he has had some pretty good plays, and just overall, I think the Raiders defensive line is really good, compared to the Lions defensive line. So they may, pressure Justin Fields into possibly making some, bad passes. Now, the Raiders last week did come off a loss against the Chargers, and, it was pretty tough for them, mainly because they did lose 2 defensive backs. So they are short on defensive backs, so that could be something that the Bears take advantage of. Now, as for the Raiders defense, there is some good news on the Raiders defense part, that David Montgomery is going to be out for 4 to 5 weeks, because of an injury that he had against the Lions, pretty late into the game. And so that will affect how the Bears do play. I think they were able to use the run game, and then, use a play action type of play style against the Lions. Now, Damian Williams, is a pretty good running back. As you could see from his highlights against the Lions, he did pretty good. So I do think he's going to help the team there, but he's not really as good as David Montgomery in my opinion. So I think that's what's going to hinder the Bears' offense, or the offense production. And then the Raiders, I think they're coming back with something to prove here. They lost to the Chargers. The Chargers are a really tough team to beat. I think they're projected at number 1 in the West, or not in the West, in the AFC. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Raiders kind of come back from losing so many defensive backs and trying to kind of recover from their short in depth and defensive backs. But I do have the Raiders winning this one. I think it's going to be, decently close, but I think the Raiders just have a really high-powered offense, and they're going to be able to score a lot of points on the Bears defense. Now, next game on the list is the Broncos versus the Steelers. The Broncos coming off of a loss against the Ravens, and then the Steelers coming off of a loss against the Packers. Now, the Broncos losing their first game, it wasn't really a surprise in my opinion, even though the Broncos were favored by 1 point, according to Vegas's bets, but it wasn't really a surprise to me. The Broncos were really beating some pretty bad teams, mediocre teams that really weren't doing much. So it wasn't really a surprise to me when faced against an actual team, they end up losing. And there has been some beef with the two teams. Vic Fangio, obviously showing his anger as to the Ravens running the ball to tie the NFL record in rushing yards in a game at the end, like the last play of the game, which I guess I'd be mad too, but I wouldn't be really that mad. It's like, we're already losing, just, I guess, do your thing, I guess. But, yeah, Vic Fangio did not seem happy about that. And the Broncos just weren't really producing much on defense, but again, didn't really surprise me because they weren't really playing any real teams up until this point. Now, the Steelers coming off of a loss against Packers, also not surprising at all. We did see kind of how that pectoral injury was limiting Ben Roethlisberger to a lot of check downs. He was doing that still earlier in the season, but now it's just more common for him to do that. So, it wasn't really a surprise there. But I do think the Broncos are going to come out on top here against the Steelers. The Broncos defense, I think, is good. And if they fix what they can do against the run game, I think they'll be pretty good because the passing game hasn't really been doing much for the Steelers. Najee Harris has been doing pretty good, I guess, for a rookie. He's doing pretty good this year. So I do think if they're able to stop the run game, especially with Von Miller, and the rest of the defense there, Bradley Chubb, I do think they're going to be able to beat the Steelers if they're able to limit the run game on Sunday. Now, next game coming up, the Titans versus the Jaguars. The Titans coming off of a loss against the Jets in overtime. Again, don't really know how that happened, but it happened. And then the Jaguars coming off of a close loss against the Bengals last Thursday. So it is going to be interesting to see what the Titans do to not lose to another bad team that starts with a J, because it wasn't really looking that good for the Titans last game. They kind of let some scores through in overtime. I do think Randy Bullock missed a kick for the Titans though, for the game tying field goal. So that is something a reason how the Titans lost. Now the Jaguars, it looks like Trevor Lawrence is doing a lot better in the NFL tempo, like I said earlier. And then, the Urban Meyer drama, I don't really know how, that's going to affect the team, but, hopefully it doesn't. We can see a pretty good game, but I do have the Titans coming on top, just because of their run offense, and maybe they'll have Julio Jones and AJ Brown back. I'm not really too sure if they will. I haven't really heard that much news on whether or not they will be. They're both questionable for this week, but I do think they're going to be playing in this game, so that's why I have the Titans winning this one. Now, next game on the list, the Eagles versus the Panthers. Now, both teams coming off of a loss. The Eagles coming off of a loss against the Chiefs, and then the Panthers coming off a loss against the Cowboys. And I do think this is going to be a pretty good game, though. Both offenses are really good, but a big development has happened with the Panthers. They traded for Stephon Gilmore. He will not be playing in this game. I believe he's currently able to play week 7, but still is a pretty big trade for the Panthers. But I do think CJ Henderson's playing in this game, so we'll get to see how he does in the Panthers playbook and against the Eagles, who have a pretty good offense. I mean, they have some weapons, but Jalen Hurts, I think, is really just carrying the team at this point. They scored pretty high against the Chiefs, 30+ points, I think, but they still lost. And then the Panthers, coming off of a pretty close one against Dallas, or not a close one, but they had it pretty close in the first half, and then kind of the lead kind of started giving way, and they ended up losing that one to Dallas. Now, I do think this is going to be a really close game, but I have Carolina coming on top for this one. It just looks like the Panthers have a really good offense. I'm not really too sure how the Eagles defense is going to be able to go against that, because we have seen that the Eagles defense isn't really that good at holding up an offense that's really dynamic. So that's why I got the Eagles, or not the Eagles, sorry. That's why I got the Panthers winning this one. Okay, so the next game for this week, the Dolphins versus the Buccaneers. Now, the Dolphins coming off a loss to the Colts, and then the Buccaneers coming off a win against New England, which was pretty close. Just Nick Folk missed the kick to win the game, but Buccaneers, surprisingly, really close game. They weren't really producing that well in the first half, and the Dolphins just haven't really been doing that well without Tua. So, Jacoby Brissett still isn't that bad of a quarterback. Just doesn't look like they've been doing that much offensive wise. Now, the Buccaneers, I do have the Buccaneers winning this one. I think the Buccaneers have a really good offense, and their defense also is really good. So I think all around Tampa Bay Buccaneers are just a better team. Now, next game on the list, the Patriots versus the Texans. I do have the Patriots winning this one. Patriots coming off of a close loss against the Buccaneers. And then the Texans coming off of a loss to the Bills. And they got absolutely destroyed that game, 40-0. And I think New England's going to win this one. I do think it's going to be pretty close, just because of the loss of Stephon Gilmore for the Patriots. But I do still think it's going to be really close. But yeah, I think the Patriots are going to come out with a win here. Now, next game on the list, we have the Browns versus the Chargers. And the Chargers coming off of 2 straight wins against two pretty good teams. You got the Chiefs, who lost to the Chargers, and then the Raiders, who lost to the Chargers. So the Chargers coming off of 2 straight wins against some pretty good teams. Now the Browns coming off of a close victory over the Vikings. Now, as to who I have winning this game, I have the Browns winning this one. I just think the Browns defense is a really good defense, and I do think they're a better defense than both the Raiders and Chiefs. So, it's going to be interesting to see how Austin Eckler does, because that was a really key piece into why they beat the Chiefs and the Raiders. And I think the Browns have a really good defense to compete with that. But I do think it is going to be a really close game, but I have the Browns winning this one. Now, next on the list, the 49ers versus the Cardinals. Now, the 49ers coming off a loss against the Seahawks, and then the Cardinals coming off of a win against the Rams, a pretty big win inside their division, and it was pretty good game for the Cardinals. I thought it was going to be closer, like I said earlier, but Cardinals coming off of a pretty big win. Now, the 49ers, I think overall this matchup is pretty important because usually any division game is really important to see where they stand. Cardinals are the only undefeated team left in the league, so they're going to have a really big target on them for this game. But I do have the Cardinals winning this one still. The 49ers defense was not able to contain the Seahawks offense really that well, at least. And then the Cardinals, I mean, they did surprisingly well against a really good defense. So, I mean, really, I think their only challenge really is the Buccaneers. I don't even know if they're playing them in the regular season. I mean, if they can beat the Rams, who have a really good defense and offense, I think the Cardinals from here on out are really just a good team. So I do have them beating the 49ers just because solely off this overall team is just really good. So, yeah, I got Cardinals winning this one. Now, next game on the list, the Giants versus the Cowboys. And I got the Cowboys winning this one. The Giants coming off of a close win against the Saints in overtime, and the Cowboys coming off of a win against the Panthers. And the Cowboys, I think, just had a better game against a pretty good team. They are no Saints. I mean, the Panthers aren't the Saints, so maybe the Giants found just a weakness in the Saints, or maybe they just made improvements on their defense and their offense and just came out and won. But I do have the Cowboys winning this one just because of how well their offense played against the Panthers. And I think the Giants have a considerably worse defense than the Panthers. So I got the Cowboys on top here. Next game, which is going to be a really good game in my opinion, the Bills versus the Chiefs. And I got the Chiefs winning this one. I think it's going to be really close. But the Chiefs coming off of a win against the Eagles, and the Bills coming off of a completely dominant win over the Texans, 40-0. So, it's going to be interesting to see what both teams do. I think it's going to be, a gunfight. I think that both the quarterbacks are going to be slinging the ball downfield. I think both defenses are going to be able to play really well against both opposing teams' offense. So I think it's going to be really close here, but I think the Chiefs just overall have a better offense that can, go past the Bills' secondary. Now for the last game of the week on Monday Night Football, the Colts versus the Ravens. The Ravens coming off of a win against the Broncos to show them, that they weren't the best 3-0 team. And then the Colts coming off a win against the Dolphins. And I got the Ravens winning this one. I think the Colts, they found something that they could do against the Dolphins, but the Ravens, their run game is just too good, I think, for the entire league. So the Ravens' run game is really good. Their defense is pretty good. I mean, their passing game could use some more work, but overall, I think the Ravens are just a better team compared to the Colts. And that'll be all for this week's predictions. Leave your predictions down in the comments below, or vote on the polls on the Instagram page at @high_scores_podcast. And you can vote for the games there and be a part of the channel. I did think I forgot to say the records for each, for me and then for you guys. Now my record is 40-23, and your record is 39-24. So it is going to be interesting. Only a 1-game difference. We'll have to see what this week comes out to. But that'll be it for me. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.